I knew that I was happy to be here, and then I got to hear Tony Scott. And I was able to tweet a federal CIO saying, OMB is now accepting public comments on this major policy document via GitHub. If you follow me on Twitter at Peter Coffey, you'll know that my comment was, this is not your father's FedGov. And that's an amazing thing. But before that, he said something else even more interesting. He said, we need to be reinventing architecture and process. You'll notice that neither of those words is a technology word. Those are behavior words. And at this point, the real challenge and opportunity are at least as much, probably much more, in the realm of organizational behavior and culture and the way we engage with the people we serve, instead of thinking that the solution is going to be in the deployment of new technology. And that's what I hope I can convey with the rest of my time with you this morning. I'm going to make a confession. When our marketing geniuses came up with this, which you may have seen in airports and in the Wall Street Journal and in other various outlets, my first reaction was, this is at best the beginning of the conversation. It's certainly not everything people need to hear. It's not really differentiating, because really the question that it raises is, who is my customer? If I'm in the automobile business today, is my customer the owner and driver in a world of Uber and Zipcar? I don't know. I don't know if that traditional view of my customer is going to do it for me anymore. If I'm in healthcare, is my customer the payer, the administrator, the doctor, the nurse, the patient, the network around the patient that's providing care for protracted illnesses like Alzheimer's and cancer? I need to have a very clear and maybe searching conversation about who is my customer today. And in this room, I want to talk about today's citizen. What makes today's citizen different, and what makes them view the people who serve them as partners in their lives and not merely remote providers of frustratingly inadequate services. What makes them special? What makes them special fundamentally is that they are connected. They are connected 24/7. There are more active mobile phone numbers on the planet today than there are living human beings. That does not mean that everybody has at least one. In Singapore, there are 120 for every 100 people, so some people are messing up the average big time here. But because they are connected all the time, they are informed all the time. This town was rocked when CNN introduced the 24-hour news cycle a while ago. Used to be you kind of knew how to bake a story so that Walter Cronkite would talk about you correctly in the evening. Yes, I know, my hair color already dates me. But the 24-hour news cycle, and as someone said, the most powerful piece of civil rights empowerment on the planet today is the cell phone camera, and the fact that it's no longer possible for anyone to try to contain stories. They get out there right away. What happens when people are connected and conversing with each other? You wind up with a tremendous amount of skepticism about traditional institutions. Right now, for example, because some university students stuck a probe up the tailpipe of a car and told the world what they found, one of the world's global brands has lost a third of its value in a matter of weeks. It wasn't a government testing lab that did this. It wasn't a peer-reviewed research process that produced this. It was a fact observed by people at whatever level of society, but shared on a global stage and immediately a subject of global conversation. When people don't have belief in institutions, what do? They turn to each other and form collaborative networks. You can either be in those networks as a welcome guest, or you cannot be there. You don't get to control them anymore. You are not the circus ringmaster. You are at best a host to the party. Now, when people are collaborating around these things, they discover things about each other. They become very value and values driven. They start to care about things like, maybe this product is cheaper, but do they test on animals? Do they use child labor? Are they irresponsible in the environment? The number of reasons why someone might now choose to engage with you or not engage with you has dramatically increased. It's become a kaleidoscope of possible concerns, issues, and stakeholders that you need to have in the conversation, and maybe even actually in the room, physically or virtually, when key decisions are being made. You can see this in any given moment. This is a random moment a few days ago on the technology page of the Reuters app on my phone, where you can see that, for example, yes, we're becoming connected. This Internet of Things thing you've heard about, it's here. And Apple is saying, what's slowdown in China? People are buying phones like crazy there. The world is becoming connected at a continuing growth rate. Because of that growth, they're becoming collaborative. Institutions like Yelp, are taking the old gatekeepers of things like the restaurant critics and saying, we don't actually need you anymore. We can form our own judgments now. These things happen very quickly. Phenomena like digital currency, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and others, they're coming on at a pace that radically exceeded people's readiness to deal with this. And governments are saying, wait a minute, how do you tax these revenue streams? How do you have accountability on these kinds of things? This is a case where behavior is outpacing legislation at an amazing rate. And things like Twitter, remember when Twitter was new? They're already being regarded as a legacy platform. Boy, that was quick. Well, the only way to deal with this kind of volume of data in any sustainable way is by introducing radically higher levels of intelligence into process. I was in Basel, Switzerland last week talking with a company that 5 years ago adopted the slogan, "People for Process Automation." I said, you know, guys, I just don't think that's going to cut it. Automating a process used to be an accomplishment, but unless today you're people for process improvement, people for process performance, people for process intelligence, then you're really aiming at where the puck used to be. You need to be asking yourself, how do I make things smarter and not just bigger? And so these four forces, connection, collaboration, acceleration, and I don't have a word for it, but AIification is the best I can do, are really the four components of the environment with which we must be dealing if we're going to be building solutions for, as Tony was saying, the new environment, which we need to be re-architecting and reinventing process. There's a phrase in math called a forcing function, which is just a function of time. I'm borrowing this from something I've read from George Friedman, who wrote The Next 100 Years. He said, you know, if you're talking about demographics or geography, you're really not making a prediction. You're just solving an equation for a future value of time. If I know how many 10-year-olds there are in India today, I have a pretty good idea of how many 20-year-old new workers they'll have in 10 years. If I know how many 60-year-olds there are in Japan today, I have a pretty good idea of how many 70-year-olds they're going to have who need maybe long-term care in 10 years. These are fundamental ideas. And as George said, it's not falling population that's a problem. It's falling and aging population, creating ratios like these, where in Japan in 2050, there will be 72 people over 65 for every 100 between 15 and 65. South Korea, in a similar vein, don't think this is just an Asian problem. As you can see, Germany and Spain are right up there as well. I wanted you to think about the Project Apollo class technology problem we have here of dealing with a population with that many old folks. I'll be there myself real soon, so I hope you get it right. Autonomous cars, those aren't a toy. That's something we're going to have, because otherwise there's an awful lot of "Dad, I need your car keys" conversations about to happen. The ability to measure simple things about your state of health in your home so that you don't come into the doctor's office for a monthly checkup or a quarterly checkup, which almost always produces the good news that you didn't really need those tests. We need cheap, simple tests at the edge of the network instead of the current system of overly expensive tests with scarce resources. We need, as Tony said, to re-architect and not merely improve the process that we have now. I've mentioned connection. It's really important to get these numbers into your head. Growth rate is impressive, but it requires that you integrate to understand the impact. Most of us don't do that. Let me make it simple. We put as much new bandwidth onto the planet last year alone as the entire planet had in 2011. So if you think this is an S-curve, no, I'm sorry. It's still hockey stick. The result of greatly increasing supply is, of course, greatly falling price. These are the relative costs of connection on the world's major data paths. If you are designing systems as if connectivity is intermittent, expensive, and slow, then reality is making you more wrong every day. If you design as if connectivity is universal, fast, and free, reality is actually getting close to you. For example, T-Mobile just announced last week that they're no longer going to count your video watching against your data limit. They've just made that bandwidth effectively free. So if I say, yes, bandwidth is becoming universal, fast, and free, that's no longer a fantasy, that's something that's happening right now. Designing systems accordingly is a good idea. We've talked about the fact that we're already at a level where there's roughly as many connections on the planet as there are people. Well, that's just for phone calls. Devices are already 2.5 to 1. I'm not sure how many connected devices I'm carrying. You can see I've only got 2 wrists, which limits me there. The degree to which this is happening is giving us numbers like these. 1 billion people logging into Facebook on a single day in August, most of them mobile, most of them not in the US. So don't think that this is just a rich world or Western world phenomenon. And as I've mentioned, when people are connected, they want to collaborate. Connected citizens are different. Used to be you knew the rules. The voters were your audience during the campaign, and once you were in office, the agencies would inform people of when they could come together and make comments on public hearings and so on, and oversight was limited. Now, effectively, every time you interact with a citizen at any level of public sector, you are holding a press conference. Most people are not trained to function in that environment correctly, and there's almost no such thing as a closed-door meeting, as any number of candidates for public office have discovered. What this means is that we need new organizations and processes. We need the ability to collaborate inside the organization so that any poor person out there at the edge who's suddenly been forced into the role of impromptu spokesperson can call upon the right subject matter expertise in the moment. This is not a cute thing to be able to do. It's a necessity created by the environment that we are now in. A little while ago, there was a formal paper published in a scientific journal with 37,000 authors' names on it. 10 scientists. The rest of them were playing a protein folding game. Yes, you can gamify this stuff. You can create experiences in which people want to participate, want to contribute, want to be part of the solution. It's not enough to connect them. It's not enough to offer them the process. You have to create an experience in which they want to give you the priceless gift of their time and their understanding of their need. We do this at Salesforce. We do it in public. We hold our managers to that standard. The same technology is used by people like Starbucks. That hole, that stick that plugs the hole in the cap so it doesn't come sloshing out, that came off of a website that was set up 8 weeks after Michael Dell and his buddy Howard Schultz at Starbucks were talking about getting the Starbucks brand mojo back. Being able to go from first conversation to global deployment and engagement in 8 weeks, that's not something you used to be able to do with IT, and now increasingly it is, as we were just hearing, a new normal. We believe that it's important to think of IT no longer as an environment in which silos are easy to construct, but as a connection platform, and we can discuss this at great length, and I will not do that today. But I do want to share 3 stories. The city of Philadelphia built a citizen engagement platform, a 311 system. You all know what that is. And it was a tremendous success to the point that it essentially melted down under demand. That's actually a good thing. People loved it. When they built the second one, they said, well, we've learned that lesson. We're not just going to build another bigger one that could be outgrown someday. We're going to build the thing 100% on cloud, and we're not going to look for a packaged 311 solution. We're going to look for a platform in which we can evolve what the city of Philadelphia really needs. That's a sophisticated understanding of the opportunity available to government today, and it's running in Philadelphia right now with fantastic results. In Europe, an agency, Eurostar, they run the trains, found itself in a familiar situation. A lot of technology debt, 2 full generations behind. A lot of capital, a lot of talent involved in fixing that, and they said, let's not do that. Let's re-platform to cloud. They thought they were just getting off the upgrade treadmill. What they discovered over the following year is that things that had formerly taken months or days now took literally minutes or seconds. I just had their CIO with me at Dreamforce talking about things that now get done in the moment of conversation to improve customer service interactively. Finally, with the Affordable Care Act, we've been conducting a 50-state experiment in how to deploy a big, complex regulatory system. And in Oregon, you may know, it was not a success. The contractor involved was dismissed with threats of lawsuits to follow after more than $100 million spent had signed up exactly 0 people. That ratio is easy to compute. Meanwhile, over in Colorado, there is no drama. They went live in the morning. They deployed their first iPad app in the afternoon. On spec, on budget, on time systems that the people who own the problem believe solve the problem. That can be a new normal. Now, a lot of people are worried about technology replacing people, and I think that's the wrong way to look at it. Garry Kasparov has observed that freestyle chess tournaments with people combining with software actually produce better chess games than chess experts or chess software. And I'll leave you with one last image. If you'd been told as a child that a double amputee would ever be said to have an unfair advantage in a world-class sprinting race, you would say that doesn't seem likely. But today, the complementarity of the right technology with the right attitude, the right energy, the right commitment, that combination is producing results that I think can change the world, and I think that everyone in this room wants to be part of that kind of process. Thank you very much.